the Big 12 Championship game Saturday night in Arlington, the final Big 12 Championship game ever, unless the Big 12 decides to expand on the horizon, but that's another topic for another day. For Nebraska, it definitely is their final Big 12 game ever, as they'll be headed to the Big Ten next year. For the Oklahoma Sooners, well, you could say they know a thing or two about the Big 12 Championship game, because this will be their 8th appearance in the title game in the last 11 years. What more can you say about that? Just an amazing feat for Bob Stoops and his staff. They're going to be looking for Big 12 title number 7. And if they can win on Saturday night, they'll be headed to a BCS game, the Fiesta Bowl. The Sooners, by the way, are now a 4.5-point favorite to win on Saturday night, but it won't be easy because Nebraska features a fantastic defense and a rushing offense that's head and shoulders above everybody else in the Big 12. We'll talk more about Nebraska in just a second. First of all, we got to give major props to Oklahoma for having 5 first-teamers on the All-Big 12 team, which was just announced on Tuesday, November 30th. First of all, Ryan Broyles, a decorated career, will probably go down as the best receiver Oklahoma has ever had. He makes the first team along with Eric Minzik up front on the offensive line, and DeMarco Murray, a decorated career as well. He makes the first team. And on defense, Jeremy Beal, not only first team defensive end, but also the defensive lineman of the year, according to the Big 12. Jeremy Beal has been consistent all season long, as has Quentin Carter, the defensive back. He was named to the first team as well. Trey Millard, the freshman fullback, second team fullback. The only freshman, by the way, to make the first or second team on offense. So Trey Millard, way to go. Of course, the Sooners, it's impossible still not to think about Bedlam. Here I am on Wednesday, December 1st. Got to give props to Kevin Wilson. Now, Kevin Wilson, the offensive coordinator, as you know, sometimes he hasn't been the best play caller, but on Saturday night in the fourth quarter, he was. With Oklahoma having a 2-point lead on 2 different occasions late in the game, he decided to let Landry Jones, and not the running game, try to win it, and it paid off as Jones, on 3rd and long deep in his own territory, with Oklahoma clinging to a 2-point lead in a very hostile environment in Stillwater, delivered a clutch pass to Cameron Kinney, who caught it in stride, and Kinney Speed did the rest. He scored a touchdown from 86 yards, and then 2 drives later, Wilson rolled the dice again. Instead of running, had Landry Jones play action in their own territory, and a 70-plus yard touchdown strike to the tight end, James Hanna, and Oklahoma. That would turn out to be the game-winning score, 47-41. Kevin Wilson, if I'm critical of him when they don't play call well, which is what happened against Texas A&M, I have to give it up to him when they do play call well, and that's what happened in Stillwater, and there was a big reason why the Sooners won that game. And, of course, one guy that I have to give props to as well is Cameron Kinney, because he's been in Bob Stoops' doghouse, you know, more than one time for dropping passes, but he didn't drop the passes on Saturday night. He ended up having the game of his life. And one other player before we get into the critique of Nebraska, and that is for Oklahoma, Jamel Fleming. Fleming, by the way, is #1 in the Big 12 in passes defended, and he was Johnny on the spot on a Saturday night by and large for the Sooners, as was on defense Austin Box. It's good to have him back at linebacker, and can't say enough about Jeremy Beal. Another terrific game for the defensive end senior. Going to miss him. He's been a terrific player. 4-year starter, by the way, for the Sooners. So Oklahoma, this is where they wanted to be, and this is where they're at in the Big 12 Championship game. Big quarterback news in this game as well for the Sooners. Landry Jones will try to become the 6th quarterback in the Bob Stoops era to win a Big 12 Championship. If the Sooners win, Jones will join Paul Thompson, Sam Bradford, Nate Hibble, Jason White, and Josh Heupel as Bob Stoops quarterbacks who've won at least 1 Big 12 championship. Sam Bradford, of course, won 2. What a fraternity that would be for the sophomore Landry Jones. Another terrific year for the sophomore from Artesia, New Mexico. Now, talking about Nebraska, this won't be an easy game for the Sooners. Oklahoma found that out in 2009 when Bob Stoops' team was held to their lowest point production in his 12-year tenure at OU. Only 3 points that game last season in Lincoln. Lost the game 10-3. Nebraska's defense did not give up much on the ground, and Landry Jones' worst game of his career, threw 5 interceptions. We'll go over more of that in a second on the 4 keys to the game, but the Sooners know that Nebraska will bring the #1 overall defense in the Big 12 to Arlington, Texas on Saturday evening. An experienced defense, Nebraska returning most of their starters on both sides of the ball. And if you saw the Big 12 team, you saw 5 Oklahoma Sooners make first team. Nebraska, by the way, well represented on the defensive side with 4 players. 4 players, by the way, making first team, and none of those players was Jared Crick. A little bit of a surprise there. Pierre Allen, though, did make it from the defensive end spot for the Huskers. Nebraska's defensive line has been terrific this season, as advertised. One guy that, if you got a chance to watch him play, covers a lot of the field, that's their linebacker, Levante David. He makes the first team, and defensive backfield players like Eric Henry, who led the Big 12 in interceptions with 5, and then the defensive player of the year in the Big 12, that was Prince Amukamara. By the way, 2nd year in a row, he makes the first team. Nebraska, yeah, you can kind of say that the black shirts are back, as probably other than the Oklahoma State game has been stellar this season on the defensive side. Iowa State, they didn't play their best ball either, but for the most part, Nebraska's defense has been difficult for opponents to move the ball against. So the Sooners know that set up the pass, you have to run well, and against Nebraska, they're going to have to do just that. But you're going against experience, and you're going against speed, and you're going against strength. So OU will have their homework laid out for them on a big desk, and hopefully they are having a terrific week of practice getting ready for this game. By the way, for the Sooners, speaking of practice, good news, Jonathan Nelson is expected that he is going to play. Had that head injury early in the Oklahoma State game during Bedlam last Saturday. He's practicing. He'll be ready to go. DeMarco Murray, the running back, we mentioned him earlier on the show. He is probable for Saturday's game. The Sooner coaches are cautiously optimistic he'll play. He took a knee injury. Helmet hit his knee early in the 4th quarter. Did not return. And if you're the Sooners, you're just doing this right now when it comes to DeMarco Murray. Need as much depth in the backfield as you can get. Otherwise, if he can't go, you're going to have to rely on the freshmen, Roy Finch and Brennan Clay, and also on Moses Madu, who were called upon in the 4th quarter in that game last Saturday in Stillwater. Now, as far as Nebraska on offense goes, the first half of the season, they looked pretty good. Taylor Martinez was one of the big surprises this year. By the way, the offensive freshman of the year in the Big 12, Martinez. It was hard for defensive backs to even try to chase him down. In fact, a lot of defensive backs couldn't. He was that good. Nebraska got off to a blazing start, and then the Texas game showed that the Huskers were pretty mortal. It was Texas's best game of the year, and what turned out to be a nightmare year for the Longhorns. For Nebraska, they could not solve the Texas defense, and when they did have guys open, Nebraska dropped the ball. So that was the one game that took them out of the national championship discussion. And then 2 weeks ago, a lot of Nebraska fans thought that they were ripped off in A&M because of controversial officiating. They lost that game 9-6. Martinez had to leave early in that game, had turf toe, had also ankle injury, tried to come back and play but was ineffective. So that was another loss for Nebraska, a 9-6 game. But last week, they showed they were resilient. Martinez didn't play in that game. Cody Green did. Green did not have big passing yardage, but did not make mistakes, completed 80% of his passes, and the ground game led by Rex Burkhead led Nebraska to a 45-17 win. So basically, Nebraska and Oklahoma, the 2 teams at the beginning of the year who are picked to represent their divisions for the Big 12 Championship game, have arrived, and it's only fitting because these 2 squads have so much tradition, so much respect for each other. Classic games over the years, Game of the Century 1 in 71, Game of the Century 2 in 1987. 21 times when these 2 teams have played has a conference championship been on the line, and in some of those years there were national championship ramifications. Great coaches, national championships, Heisman Trophy winners, and Nebraska and Oklahoma one more time It'll be on Saturday. There's rumors, by the way, that next decade they could end up playing each other in a home-and-home series, but that wouldn't be till at least the year 2020. We'll keep you posted on that. So unless they meet in a bowl game anytime in the near future, this will be the final time you'll see OU and Nebraska play each other for a long time, and in a way it's kind of a shame. Let's go ahead and highlight the 4 keys to the game we've already kind of talked about. Number 1, contain Nebraska's rushing attack. Halou Jr. has over 1,000 yards this season for the Huskers. Burkhead's pretty close to doing that as well. And Taylor Martinez, if he plays, that's going to be a game-time decision. He's close to 1,000 as well. As a matter of fact, he's thrown for over 1,000 yards this season for Big Red. If you're Oklahoma, I think a realistic goal is keep Nebraska's rushing attack to about 150 yards. If you can do that, you're going to force them to throw. They're dead last in the Big 12 in passing offense. So try to make Nebraska throw because the rushing attack can control the game. Number 2, OU don't repeat 2009. Meaning last year's game in Lincoln, in which Landry Jones did not make good decisions. Last week against Oklahoma State, the first half he didn't make good decisions, but the second half he did, and he came up with a great fourth quarter. Hopefully we'll see more of that in Arlington on Saturday. So make good decisions. It won't be an easy chore because of Nebraska's backfield. Defensive backfield, they're number 1 in the Big 12, one of the best in the country. Number 3, Jimmy Stevens, the kicker for the Sooners. He went 4 for 4 last week, was golden in the fourth quarter. Granted, they weren't long field goals, but Stevens needed any type of confidence he could get after showing inconsistency throughout the year. It's going to be the same surface they're going to play on Arlington that they did in Stillwater, the synthetic turf, so that hopefully will boast well for Jimmy Stevens. Again, he was big last week. He'll be called upon this week. You know he will be. And then number 4, third down conversions. The Sooners are the best in the Big 12 in this department. They had 27 third downs against the Cowboys last week, converted 16 of them. That's almost 60%. Nebraska, number 1 in the Big 12, and the least amount of third down conversions allowed. They only give up third down conversions about 32% of the time. Something's going to give in this department. If the Sooners can get around 50% on third downs, they can control the clock like they did last week. They had the ball for about 35 minutes against Oklahoma State. Final thoughts on this game. It's going to be physical. It's going to be hard hitting. A lot on the line. A trip to the Fiesta Bowl, while the loser could be looking at a trip to the Alamo Bowl or the Inside.com Bowl or the Holiday Bowl. It won't be the Cotton Bowl because Texas A&M has already accepted an invitation to play in that game. So a shot for Oklahoma to get to a BCS game and play in the Fiesta Bowl. I don't think it'll be easy for the Sooners, but they've been in these big games before. The coaching staff has. They know what it's like to win the Big 12 championship game. The health of Taylor Martinez is very critical. I don't think he's going to be 100%, although I do think he'll play, but I don't think he's going to be able to be at his best. I think that's going to be a factor. And the way Oklahoma played last week against Oklahoma State against the run, I thought was extremely pivotal. And I think that gives them confidence. I'm going to go 31-28 Oklahoma to win this game and to claim Big 12 Championship number 7 against Big Red. It'll be a lot of fun in Arlington on Saturday. It's going to be some anxiety too, but that's part of college football. Oklahoma to win by a field goal. I'll have the Big 12 matchups and then some coming up later this week and post-game of OU Nebraska sometime on Sunday.